Boy, oh boy, do I have a story for you folks today. We are going to be talking about the single worst track and field athlete, lowest output, hopeless individual I have ever coached in my entire life. So if that is you, keep watching. This is the story about Nicholas Rossi. I have been coaching Nick Rossi since about 2019. Now, what you don't know about Nick is that when I first saw him jump, I thought I had my work cut out for me. This individual was not explosive, he was not strong, he was not tall, and I did not have a lot of hope in his long term athletic development. That said, he came to me wanting to dunk a basketball. Prior to working with me, Nick was cut from his high school basketball team. He was about 5'6", triple jumped 32 feet, something I did when I was like 12, and high jumped like 4'6". Okay, so things were not looking up for him. They were not promising. But to Nick's credit, he loves sports and he loves to work hard. Now, you guys are probably familiar with Hoop and Nate. Nick was like Hoop and Nate, but didn't film. So he dunked on those hoops that are on the back of your door all the time, and this was probably good for him because it allowed him to build up his elastic contacts over time. So come around Nick's sophomore year of high school, he realized that he needed to get more athletic. Fortunately for him, there was an amazing training program that he signed up for. It's called Teach Me Strength, and you can go to teachmestrength.com and you can potentially go from an absolute slob, unathletic slug person to hopefully being what Nick is today. So during Nick's junior year, he trained his balls off. To his credit, he absolutely surprised me during this time. He trained for 9 months straight doing some of our most complex training. Now, for those of you that don't know, we have something called long sequence conjugate systems. And what this is you essentially have a focus, which usually starts with about max strength or concentric max strength and progressively moves into higher force, higher intensity activities like bounding, sprinting really, really fast, different plyos, and even accentuated eccentrics. So during this 9-month period, Nick essentially went from jumping 33 feet in triple jump, high jumping like 4'9", to eventually doing 5'6", 39 feet in triple jump, and 18.6 in long jump. As well as his track marks going up quite a bit, his strength numbers also increased dramatically. His squat went from about 135 to 225. He ended up power cleaning 135 as well as front squatting around 185 pounds. So after his junior year of track and field, Nick realized that training works. So he dials in and he starts to train even harder. So after his track and field season, Nick gets his first dunk on 10 feet that summer. Going into his senior year of high school, he trains with us even harder than he did in the previous year. However, as a result of him trying to do track and field with his high school team, as well as do our training, he ends up running into a little bit of proximal tendinopathy. However, fortunately, I've dealt with this myself, and we applied load management principles to get his hamstring tendinopathy under control. As a result, though, Nick gained a lot of weight, and he struggled his senior year of track to make up for a lot of the elastic volume that we had to take out to get him healthy. That said, Nick got a lot stronger. He also had grown to 6'3" at this point, but he didn't have the best season that year. So after only jumping 5'6" his senior year of high school, Nick decided that he actually wanted to do track and field in college. Now, this was incredibly surprising to me as a coach because I would never expect to compete in track and field collegiately, only having jumped 5'6" in high jump my senior year of high school. For perspective, when I was 14, I was jumping 5'10". So for Nick, as an 18-year-old, to come to me and tell me he wanted to compete in track, I was very, very surprised. I knew I had my work cut out for me as a coach, but I knew that Nick is an incredibly hard worker, so I was hopeful that he would continue to develop. Nick had also experimented with learning how to speed jump off of his opposite leg, and so we thought it would be best for him to go back to jumping off his dominant leg as a power jumper. To boost Nick's athleticism, we used a program that I used with Jordan Wessner during one of the summers that he was training in the off-season. Now, this program has an incredibly high volume of contacts, meaning he was doing a lot of lunge jumps, he was doing a lot of running, a lot of skipping, a lot of sprinting. And if you guys are on the training and you would like to try this, you can always let us know, and I would be happy to have you test this as well. But Nick ended up jumping way, way, way higher. He actually said this is one of the most effective training programs he's ever done. But what probably happened is he developed all of this strength his senior year of high school, and this was really intensifying that and translating a lot of the work that he did in the weight room to the track. So during this year, Nick goes all the way from 5'6" his senior year to 6'1" in high jump. Along with jumping 6'1" on high jump, he actually started to punch one-handers on 10 feet as well as hitting windmills for the first time. So after a really successful freshman year competing unattached and improving his high jump by about 7 inches, which is crazy, Nick needed to train even harder. At this point, he had done a ton of different macrocycles and mesocycles, so I had to increase the intensity quite a bit. So I actually imposed one of the most complex, difficult programs I've ever written in my entire life for Nick. Now, this program I've used with track and field guys, but it involves a lot of tempo running. It involves a lot of sprinting and hellacious power clean sessions and squat sessions, all built into an 8-week progression that ended up taking Nick from an average athlete and turning him into an absolute unit. So during this time, Nick absolutely shocked me. I never expected him to complete all of the training volume. I thought he would probably fall off at this point and would probably stop working with me as a coach. But to my surprise, Nick completed all of the training, and leading into his outdoor season that summer, we backed off a ton of volume. We had him jumping twice a week and really just kept him healthy in the weight room by using heavy, slow resistance training. This was probably one of the most beautiful programs I've ever put together, and Nick ended up jumping another 2 inches higher in the high jump that year. He consistently was jumping 6'1" to 6'3" that outdoor season, as well as beginning to absolutely crush windmills, two-handers, reverses, all these difficult dunks off of 1 foot on 10 feet. Because Nick was super diligent about all the work he did in the fall, his power clean went up to about 215 pounds, his back squat deep got all the way up to 285, and he also improved his power snatch from about 105 to 135 pounds. Now, for those of you that don't realize this, those are crazy gains for someone that has a considerable training age. At this point, Nick has been training with me for like 24 to 30 months, and his gains during this time were shocking. The only downside to this is that one day when Nick was outside training, he sprained his ankle on a dirt hill, and this did kind of take away from some of his outdoor performances that he could have had that year. Once he finished his outdoor season, we sat down and talked about some options that he had leading into his junior year or his third year of college. Now, Nick's major goal was to go Division I in track and field. Again, when he first came to me, I was shocked at his goal. However, Nick is incredibly dedicated, did every single thing that I said, and loves training. He's dedicated to the process, and he understands what it takes to get better long term. This is something a lot of people really struggle with, and to Nick's credit, he does better than almost any athlete I've ever coached. So after completing the long conjugate sequence systems, the incredibly difficult training that I gave him prior to unloading him, and the Jordan Westner program that I gave him to actualize much of what he developed in the weight room, we needed to try something different. So what we did is we reached out to one of the #1 track coaches in the entire world, Rolf Ullmann. So for those of you that don't know, Rolf assisted Randy Huntington in China in coaching one of the fastest accelerators ever. Now, with the help of Randy and Rolf, Su Bingtian went from an injured athlete to the fastest accelerator ever. So we wanted to try many of the methods that Rolf used with Nick in his high jump journey. So during this time, we developed a very unique training system to help Nick achieve his goal of making a Division I roster. This is some of the most fun that Nick ever had. He was on the track running super fast all the time, moving weights incredibly quickly. We used bands, accommodating resistance, accentuated eccentrics, and all of these other complex advanced methods to help move the needle. Nick ended up getting way faster during this time. 30-meter fly time improved from 3.4, which is very disappointing, all the way down to 309, which is actually very, very, very fast, especially considering that Nick is not a naturally explosive individual. However, as we came into the indoor season, Nick was really struggling to actualize this on the high jump apron. He wasn't jumping super well, although he felt incredibly fresh and fast and explosive. He really wasn't seeing that transfer to his actual jumping on the high jump apron. However, even though he didn't jump super well that indoor season, he ended up making his absolute life goal of being on a Division I team. Nick got accepted to a Division I program, Lehigh in Pennsylvania, and started training with the team this past spring. During this time, Nick and I had a conversation, and he essentially told me that he really wanted to lean into what they were doing over there at Lehigh. I totally understood this. Having had a coach, a private coach, and a track coach, it's very difficult to balance those out, and I had issues in high school myself. So we had a conversation, and Nick essentially said, hey, if I need your help, I'll reach out, but essentially this is gonna be my last month working with you. This actually, to me, was a major success. Nick's life goal of being a Division I high jumper ended up being accomplished, and for me, I was super proud of him. However, during the outdoor season, Nick had a couple of hiccups and ended up reaching out to me during a little bit of a break to assess some of the deficits that he felt like he had. So we realized that Nick needed a lot of hard training to improve, so we returned to the very difficult long conjugate sequence system that he did prior to unloading, and Nick saw insane results. And I'm happy to announce that Nick jumped 6 foot 3.5 inches in the high jump just last weekend. Hopefully, in the coming weeks, Nick jumps even better and is able to continually impress me with his performances. That's the video, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.